The Sam and Sam Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. My name is Sam McGinnis. I'd like to welcome on my other co-host, Sam Teets. How you doing?
I'm doing great, McGinnis. It's awesome to be with you tonight.
Yeah, and we got March Madness coming up. I was really excited about this. I filled up probably too many brackets, but
and they're all busted by now. They're all wrong at this point.
I think everybody's is just for the sake of Ohio State absolutely blowing it. So let's talk about that one first.
Yeah, let's get right into that. So I think we had two upsets today. The big one, of course, is being 15 seed Oral Roberts toppling number 2 seed Ohio State, who I think I had a winning 3 games, I want to say. So it's kind of a big deal here. And went to overtime. Oral Roberts hang on 175-72. So I think this is going to – there's a lot of people now who just don't – they've already lost. The perfect bracket is gone for most people at this point.
Yeah, if somebody picked Oral Roberts and still gets the perfect bracket, I'm going to be immensely surprised. Also, I've literally never heard of that school before today.
I've heard of it, but I never expected them to beat Ohio State. I just didn't expect it to happen this year. But
yeah, nobody expects a small Christian school to beat up Ohio State. I don't think that's
not in any sport. But
to be
that wasn't the only upset. That wasn't the only upset today, though. I mean, 12 seed Oregon State beat 5 seed Tennessee. I think I had Tennessee winning 1-2 games as well. So that's another mark against me there. I've not done a very good job this year with picking brackets, and they won pretty handily. They won 70-56. So that's another big upset.
Yeah, and I will say that is a note. 5 to, I believe, 7 seeds are usually the most likely to be upset. So it shouldn't be too much of a surprise, but it is still, for some reason, surprising when we see it.
Well, yeah, but also 70-56. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was a pretty good win there.
Yeah, solid handling.
Just to run down the line here, some other notable games. Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma State just closed out Liberty 69-60. Wisconsin just throttled UNC. Wisconsin was a 9 seed. UNC was an 8 seed. This is going to be one of the games that everyone was watching because it was supposed to, these are two pretty equal teams. And they're also teams that had a lot of success recently, Wisconsin and UNC. But Wisconsin wins 85-62, just absolutely destroys them.
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I remember when we had our March Madness preview with Mike, we were all talking about how this game was supposed to be like really close. And then Wisconsin just blows them over like nothing.
Yeah, Wisconsin absolutely ran through them. I think Mike picked Colgate to upset Arkansas, and Arkansas goes out and destroys Colgate 85-68.
I will say the first half was really close, actually. Colgate had a lead a couple of times, so it was looking like he was going to be right, which scared me because it's always scary when he's about to be right. But then, they rolled him in the second half, so it made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, so we didn't have to deal with Mike coming in and telling you, I told you so later on. The other games today, I mean, the first game of the day was actually Virginia Tech versus Florida. Florida 7 seed, Virginia
really
Tech
good
10 seed. That was a really good game. Yeah, I watched that one all the way through. Goes to overtime. Florida hangs on to win 75-70. So the first game of the day off to a great start already. But I think everything else has gone pretty much as expected looking through the rest of the games.
Well, that's because most of the other games are 1 seeds.
Yeah. Illinois rolling over Drexler. I mean, Baylor.
So expected,
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, it's pretty much to the point where we expected this stuff. Houston winning their game pretty easily. So a lot of close games, but of course, obviously, you have some of the blowouts in there. You always do this early stage of the tournament. Right now, I'm watching Rutgers and Clemson on the background, so I'm looking at Direction 8 Point during the show because I'm just watching the game a little bit. I told you, I've got a lot of people up here.
Dude,
I've got a lot of people up here. A lot of people up here in New Jersey are very invested in Rutgers, including an uncle of mine who's already started trash talking us. Put me and my brother, who went to Clemson as well, in a group chat. He's trash talking us already, and we're only about 7 minutes into the game. So
that's always nice. Trash talk before the game is over is always a bad idea, folks.
Yeah. I'm hoping he gets karma'd. That's what I'm hoping for.
Hey, karma is interesting. But we've got some great NFL news today. There's a lot of it. Specifically, I want to start with the Patriots because I don't know, is it just me or did Bill Belichick straight up get pissed off that Tom Brady won a Super Bowl and is not willing to be patient with his rebuild?
I don't think Bill Belichick views this as a rebuild. I think Bill Belichick views this as a retooling of some sort. He's not trying to fully rebuild. He's just trying to go in there and he's going to take everything he needs and find the talent. Because he admitted this past year the roster wasn't very talented. But they went out in free agency, and just to talk about some of the guys they added. After re-signing Cam Newton, they added Nelson Aguilar at wide receiver. The top 2 tight ends in free agency, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. Pro Bowl outside linebacker Matt Judon. They brought centers David Andrews and Ted Karras in, along with safety Jalen Mills and linebacker Kyle Van Noy. So they've added, I mean, what was that? They've added close to a dozen new stars to their roster here in just the past 2 or 3 days.
They nearly set the record for most money paid in 24 hours in free agency, just putting that into perspective.
Which is hilarious because I think there was a stat out there. They spent almost as much money in free agency the other day, the first day of free agency, the first day of legal tampering. They spent almost as much money as they had spent in the past 10 years in free agency. So it's just like, it's completely uncharacteristic for them. My issue, though, is I don't know if this is necessarily a good thing for the Patriots because, I mean, you got to look who they added. They paid a lot of money to Nelson Aguilar here. Nelson Aguilar, who is coming off a career year, and a lot of these guys don't have careers. They don't have careers twice in a row. You have a career and you dip back down a little bit. So you pay a lot of money to Nelson Aguilar, who's at best a wide receiver 2. You pay a lot of money to Kendrick Bourne, who's at best a wide receiver 3. You pay a lot of money to those guys. And you paid Matt Judon a lot. Matt Judon, a little bit of a product of the system they run in Baltimore where they blitz a lot. I don't necessarily love the signing, the amount of money they gave him. I'm fine with David Andrews, Ted Karras, Kyle Van Noy. Those guys have worked
absolutely
in New England in the past. I totally understand that. Jalen Mills, I mean, that's a lot of money for a below-average defense back at times. And the tight ends. I mean, the tight ends, they're good players, don't get me wrong, but they're not Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez. This is not going to be a repeat of what it was in the early 2010s. They're not that good. So it's very – well, and they're getting – go ahead. No, go ahead.
My question comes to Cam Newton. I hope the Patriots did not re-sign him in the fact that he will then still be the starter. They need to either draft one or trade for one within a year or two because Cam Newton cannot be a functional starter.
Well, not for a long term. I mean, he's going to be the starter this year. I mean, let's put it that way. Jarrett Stidham's not beating him out in a quarterback duel. They're at 15 in the draft. They could draft Mac Jones. He's the only quarterback who's going to be there at 15, though, of the top 5. So I think it's pretty realistic.
Honestly, that's actually a steal. I think Mac Jones could be something. And the fact that he could still be there at 15 makes sense considering the other talent, but that wouldn't be a bad option.
No, I'm not saying it'd be horrible, but I think Mac Jones probably won't beat out Cam Newton. I don't think, especially not in the system they're trying to run New England, I think Cam Newton will have an advantage there because obviously he's been there for a year as well. Now, bringing Cam Newton on does not preclude New England from going out and signing another quarterback or going out and drafting a rookie very highly. It is a 1-year deal. It's heavily incentivized. There's not a ton of base salary there. So let's be fair here. I mean, this is not guaranteeing Newton the starting job. He's going to have to earn that. But I just don't see, even Mac Jones, I don't see him coming in and winning the job from Cam Newton. And let's be honest, part of the reason Newton struggled so much last year was just because the roster was bad.
There was no talent whatsoever. Yeah. There was none.
Yeah. The roster was awful. So they're going to have we're going to have a little bit more of a chance to see how good Cam Newton is or how much he has left in the tank this year. Overall, I think the contract for Newton was pretty good for New England because there's not a lot of risk involved there at all.
Right.
Kind of like last year. And let's be honest, with the Patriots, I don't think they got much better. I think they're probably going to be, if it's a 16-game season, a 9-7 team. If it's a 17-game season, 9-8. Maybe slip in there as the 7th seed in the playoffs. I mean, the last wildcard seed. I think that's probably what's going to have happen. But right now, they're just not good enough to be a divisional championship team.
Yeah, and honestly, last year the fact that they did go 7-9, I think attests to the prowess of Bill Belichick more than anything else. That offense was garbage.
No, absolutely. I think Bill Belichick deserves a lot of credit for getting that far with that Patriots team. But I think they'll get a little bit further this year. I just think they're not going to get back to what they were with Tom Brady. They're just not going to happen.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Because here's the thing: there are some coaches that can make a quarterback out of anybody. So if that's the truth with Cam Newton, if they can somehow get him back to his old form, even, which would, I'm sure, make a lot of people happy. But if somebody could do it, it would be Bill Belichick.
No, I agree. Bill Belichick is the guy who would be like at the most out of a roster like this. I just think it will take one more year. I think you do need another quarterback. I don't think Cam Newton is the worst QB out there. He won't be the worst starting quarterback in the NFL this year. But he will. He's not going to be the kind of guy you can probably win a Super Bowl with. He's probably not going to be the guy you can beat the Buffalo Bills with. So
he'll be a bottom 5, bottom 10 somewhere in there.
Probably bottom 10. I would say bottom 10 is probably fair.
Yeah.
But looking at some other quarterback signings in the NFL, Andy Dalton signs with the Chicago Bears. Basically, Chicago swung for the fences with the Russell Wilson trade, and they struck out, and now you get Andy Dalton. Here's
all I have to say. The Bears, do not be mad if you're a Bears fan. Here's why. The Bears did literally everything they could to give you a better quarterback. They offered them 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 veteran starters, and the Seattle Seahawks said no, which is hilarious to me because in my mind, the moment they lose Russell Wilson, which will eventually happen, I believe, they're going to be in the middle of a rebuild. I feel like some foresight there should have been, wow, we're never going to get something better than this. This is the best way possible you could start a rebuild. I would have taken that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. They don't view themselves as rebuilding. I mean, Pete Carroll, how old Pete Carroll is at this point. Pete Carroll is not going to want to coach through a rebuild. He wants to be in win now mode. And they just won the division this past year, so they probably view it as, hey, we're winning now. If we trade Russell Wilson, we have no shot. And here's the thing. Those Chicago draft picks, they're all in the middle of the draft. So you're not going to get a franchise quarterback with those draft picks no matter what. So I think that's the issue there.
That's where we've talked about this before about the class of linemen. If you get the linemen before you get the QB, first off, whoever the QB is behind those linemen is going to be better whether he sucks or not. And then second, when your quarterback comes in, he's not going to get murdered like Joe Burrow.
Yeah, but that means you're basically punting on this season, and you're counting on next year's draft to be good for quarterbacks, which it isn't. So the issue is that you're basically losing, you're guaranteeing you're going to lose the next 2 years if you make that trade with Russell Wilson. So that's the problem. You're guaranteeing 2 losing seasons.
I think ultimately it would be better for their rebuild, though. I mean, like, tell me, do you really think they're going to have that kind of draft capital when it comes around? Because it's going to come around soon when they're going to be rebuilding, and they're going to look back at this Russell Wilson trade wishing they had.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You also draft capital. I mean, draft capital is nice, but the reality is free agency is where you get the guys you actually know can play. So this is the thing. If you have a guy you know can play, Russell. What?
I feel like it's somewhat of a 50-50 combination. You get the young youth there, and then you get the veterans through free agency.
Yeah, but the draft is a betting process. You gamble there all the time. The draft is one big lottery when it comes to talent. So you can take the top quarterback by far, and he could be the third, fourth best prospect in the last 10 years, and he could come out and he could just suck. He could be Jameis Winston and come out and be semi-decent, but not because Jameis Winston was a highly touted prospect. He came out, he was not very good. So the issue is that you have situations like this where that kind of thing happens. Marcus Mariota came out, was not good. RG3 came out, was not good after year 1. So the issue is that there's so much gambling there. A quarterback you know can play at an MVP level is just worth so much more than taking a risk. And frankly, I think Seattle's smart to hold on to him. Because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. If this relationship is salvageable, I think you absolutely have to keep Russell Wilson because, like I said, at that point, you're punting on your immediate future.
I will say I'm going to disagree with you somewhat on the current quarterback situation in the drafts because in the past, which you said is 100% true, but I feel like from the 2018 draft on, I can really only name 1 or 2 of those QBs that are bust, and that's Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen. I mean, Baker Mayfield was a success, I think, to this point, successful enough. Lamar Jackson. Dwayne Haskins is a mess.
Daniel Jones. Dwayne Haskins is not going to be a star this year. Daniel Jones is not very good, in my opinion. So I think you could say
Daniel Jones is interesting. because he's kind
of Daniel Jones is very up and down. I'm not a Daniel Jones fan. I mean, he was a very good deep passer this past year, but I don't know. I can't see it. I mean, he'll need a Josh Allen level jump to really impress me.
That's a large order to ask. If he jumps to average QB, would you be more, or even heck, if he cut his turnovers in half, I think you'd be far happier.
Well, if he cuts his turnovers in half, he's probably a top 16 quarterback, which is good enough for my book. Good enough, I'll get off his back, but I still think it's asking quite a bit. Other quarterback news: Ryan Fitzpatrick signs with the Washington football team. This is just going to be fun. I mean, look, you go from a guy in Alex Smith, who obviously comeback player of the year, but doesn't have a very high ceiling, to someone like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's so up and down, so much of a roller coaster, but he's fun to watch. And he has a very good defense there in Washington. It's just going to be a fun team to watch this year with Ron Rivera as head coach.
The hilarious part is with that division, they absolutely, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, could make the playoffs.
Absolutely. They could win that division.
That's the funny part. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the second best QB in that division.
Exactly, yeah. He walks in there. He's better than Jalen Jones already. He's better than Jalen Hurts. Dak Prescott's obviously better than him. But I think Washington with Ryan Fitzpatrick is such an upgrade over Alex Smith to me that Washington is now the best team in that division. I would take them over Dallas to win that division. So I think it's I know Ryan Fitzpatrick is up and down.
That is the defense, though.
Yeah, the defense is what can carry you. But I think Fitzpatrick has no problem throwing the ball down the field. He's a gunslinger. So, sure, I'll turn the ball over a lot. But you know what? You got a chance to actually score over 20 points per game now because you have Fitzpatrick on your team. So I just think that'll be a very fun franchise to watch over this coming year as they kind of feel it out in front of Fitzpatrick. I think they will get back to the playoffs.
And will they get a name? Also, yes, the best part I think about Ryan Fitzpatrick in this organization is Ryan Fitzpatrick can work with anybody, even if they suck. Yeah. So it's kind of I see this as a better QB option for them.
No, I absolutely agree. I think he will work well with some of the young pieces they have there offensively. Scrolling down through the other news we have, the Dolphins get backup quarterback Jacoby Brissett, who has starting experience with the Colts, and they get Will Fuller. So it's the Dolphins got, I guess, a little bit better in free agency, a little bit better. I don't know. Will Fuller has to finish serving a suspension for PEDs. I think he's going to miss one game, I think. He was decent this past year, but he's not like real wide receiver one kind of talent. And you got Jacoby Brissett, who basically is a very high-quality backup who might compete with Tua for the starting job if Tua doesn't play well. I don't know. I don't know. Miami to me is so close, but the quarterback situation is so sketchy. I just don't know.
They're an enigma. It literally depends on Tua. That's what it is. Because they can make the playoffs. It's just up to Tua.
Yeah. If Tua is the 16th best quarterback in the NFL, they probably win 11 games and make the playoffs. If he's in the 20s, they maybe will win 9 or 10 games, and they're probably going to miss a game. So it's just like it really comes down to him. I mean, if he is top 16, they're fine. If he's anything other than that, they're probably screwed long term here. And they might have to go through a situation where you have to draft a quarterback in the first round again. Like I said, with the coming year's drafts, we don't know how it's going to go. But, I just think the Dolphins are in a very weird situation.
Yeah, and I think the Tua situation can work out. It's just an unknown yet. He's kind of the X factor of that team right now.
Absolutely. And speaking of a team that's kind of in a weird situation, the Kansas City Chiefs elected to sign former Patriots guard Joe Thuney to a 5-year, $80 million deal, which sets a record at $16 million per year. Where do I start with this? I mean,
I feel like the way you have to start with this is, wow, what a mismanagement of money.
Yeah, here's the issue here. Guard is generally not one of the more important positions along the offensive line. I mean, it's the two tackles are the more important ones because with guards, when you draft a tackle in the first round, they fail as an offensive tackle like Eric Flowers did for the New York Giants a couple years ago. They move into guard. There's a reason why the failures at tackles move into guard. It's an easier position to play. So paying a guy like Joe Thuney to be the highest paid guard in the NFL when you just cut both of your starting tackles, I don't like that. I really don't like that move. And here's the other thing. Joe Thuney is a good guard. Don't get me wrong.
He is.
There are about 7 other guards better than Joe Thuney in the NFL. So people talking around like he's an all-pro, he's a Pro Bowler, he's an elite guard. He hasn't been that. He's been a good starting guard, probably top 10 guard, but he has not been an elite guard. So to me, it's a very weird signing. I get you're trying to fix the offensive line, but your other offensive line signings this offseason, you signed Kyle Long. I like that deal. But Kyle Long was retired last year for a reason. He was being banged up so much. The injuries were just compiling over and over again. And he was a former All-Pro, but he just couldn't stay healthy. So Kyle Long, you signed him out of retirement, and you brought back Mike Remmers to play tackle. Mike Remmers is the guy who was a Carolina Panther, who got bullied by Von Miller in the Super Bowl when the Broncos won, and just went out there and got bullied by Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. So now when you're starting to guy who's gotten bullied in 2 Super Bowls by good defensive linemen, you're basically guaranteeing that's going to happen throughout the entire season. And one of your other starting guards, Kyle Long, is a guy who was on the couch this past year. So to me, it's just a very
See,
I don't know.
Here's my problem. In any normal situation, I would say, well, so you're not going to be the best team in the AFC anymore. And this might actually be the case. I think the Bills could potentially actually pass them in wins just because of the loss of offensive linemen. I mean, imagine Patrick Mahomes during the Super Bowl except every game because that's pretty much what's going to happen.
That's all I'm saying, man. It's not, you haven't fixed the offensive line. You've added one really stable guard, but you don't have 2 stable tackles. You've drafted a guy in Lucas Niang out of TCU this past year, but he opted out of his rookie season, so he hasn't seen a snap yet in the NFL. So and you're probably expecting him to come in and play one of the tackle spots, and Mike Rivers will play the other one. I mean, that's just
your offensive line is 50% there.
Yeah, it's 50% there. You have one good offensive lineman on your team right now, in Joe Thuney.
You got
and everyone else.
You got one or two decent offensive linemen, a few unknowns, and then everybody else.
Yeah, whereas going to last year, you had at least two really good tackles, two high-quality tackles who were probably top 16 guys. And we're talking about left and right tackles combined, top 16 guys in a league where there are so many starting tackles throughout the time throughout a season. But, we'll move on from that. We just explained it's kind of a mess to a team that's doing things right for instance. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers brought back basically everyone. And this is probably the worst case scenario for everyone else in the NFL. They have signed Shaq Barrett to a long-term deal after tagging Chris Godwin. They're probably working on a long-term deal with him. You bring back Levante David. He's not going to break the bank for you. And you sign Gronk back. So basically, the only key contributors haven't brought back yet are Ndamukong Suh, who might retire, and Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette. And Antonio Brown was your third-string receiver last year, and Leonard Fournette was your second or third-string running back.
I have there's one other major problem with this. The super teams in the NFL, like we've seen in the past, that really don't have a lot of holes, minus the Buccaneers, really isn't a thing this season. I can't name you another team. Even the Bills have their own problems. And for me, now it's like, okay, so that almost guarantees Tom Brady getting his 8th, which is lovely.
Don't say that. Don't say such things.
I have something good to say. I think this is going to sound a little insane, but I think their actually greatest competition for the Super Bowl this year is going to be the Rams.
All right. No, I could possibly buy that.
If
the Rams have lost a little bit.
If their defense is good enough to not necessarily of the part was last year, but good enough to stop Tom Brady, because people can, and we've seen Tom Brady throw some interesting passes this last season. It's not like he's unbeatable. Even the Packers defense destroyed him. And then Matthew Stafford. Yeah, this is possible.
No, I could see. I think in the NFC, the Packers probably still because of Aaron Rodgers, and I would say the Rams. The concern with the Rams is you've lost John Johnson, who was a really good safety for you, and you lost Troy. I'm forgetting his last name. Troy Hill, who was your nickel back, basically, and he also played outside a little bit, so a very versatile defensive back. So you've lost a little bit if you're the Rams. You also lost Gerald Everett, your backup tight end. I think that the Rams are still going to be a good football team, and obviously adding Matt Stafford helps quite a bit. It's going to come down to how much the running game is developed to me. I think the running game is going to be something important, and I want to see how that secondary is affected by losing two key players. But I agree with you. I think the Rams are going to be one of the closest teams to the Bucs in the NFC, especially because they beat them this past season.
This is a really depressing thing to hear, too, because the Rams on paper are not a Super Bowl contender. Though technically I would actually say just because of how bad the NFC is, they are. But on paper, they aren't.
Well, speaking of a team in the NFC, in the Rams division, the Seattle Seahawks, who, by the way, they only have 3 draft picks this year, which really doesn't go well for them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Seattle kind of shapes things up. But they signed
about draft picks. I'm sorry. I heard that they just only have 3 draft picks. They could have 4 more.
Yeah, well, those wouldn't all be this year anyways. But they have signed Chris Carson to a 2-year deal. I think it's actually a 3-year deal, but it has 1 voidable year at the end. So basically, it's like they sign these 3-year deals with a void year at the end. It's basically like a ghost year that you just spread out like the signing bonus on. So the signing bonus gets spread out over 3 years instead of just 2. But it sounds like it's really just a 2-year deal right around $15 million is what I'm hearing. That's kind of what the contract is actually going to look like in practice.
I like this move because I actually like Chris Carson as a running back. If they can get him going again, they might have a little bit of a better situation in Seattle, because I think people's problem is they're either one of 2 ways. They're either with Pete Carroll on like only ever running, or everybody says let Russ cook. Here's the thing, he runs out of gas. We've seen this now twice. You have to let him cook to a decent point, because asking anybody to throw a ridiculous number of times is going to wear most QBs out. That's just a
At some point Russ kind of hits his wall, and it happens almost every year. So that's the concern, I think, with Seattle. Is you have to have some kind of balance between what they were doing in 2019 versus what they were doing at the start of 2020, where it's just Russ throwing the ball all the time. And Chris Carlson really fits that scheme well. The concern with him is the injuries. He has 2,000 rushing seasons under his belt, but the injuries have been somewhat consistent throughout his time there. So we'll see. I mean, hopefully he can stay healthy, because when he stays healthy, he is a very good back. And speaking of a very good back, Philip Lindsay, who was a restricted free agent, who got tendered by the Broncos, or was going to be tendered, and then the Broncos rescinded that tender, basically let Philip Lindsay walk into free agency.
Yep.
He has signed a contract. A former Pro Bowler, also has 2 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He has signed a contract with the Houston Texans, who now have Philip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, and David Johnson all under contract on the same roster.
Yep. I swear, I'm still waiting to see Houston finally let up on on Watson there. I wonder if he'll actually end up holding out for the season or not. Because if they get enough pieces, they might convince him.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're going to do with it. I mean, they haven't added to me any. They've had maybe 2 good pieces. Obviously, they've really been bargain bin hunting, in my opinion. So I think they're having a little bit of an issue there, where they've been finding, these low-level guys who are going to be backups or second and third strings. They have a ton of depth now because of it. They just don't have very good quality starters. I mean, I think there's a problem in Houston right now where they don't really know what they're doing. They're spending money because they have money to spend. They're just not getting impact players.
Mostly because the Patriots took most of the pieces that existed.
Yeah, mostly because the Patriots spent all that money on day one. Another veteran player who signed a contract. Trent Williams has signed a 6-year deal with right around $138 million. That's about $23 million per year with the San Francisco 49ers. So he re-signs there. This guy was the best left tackle in the NFL this past year. He's got a couple seasons where he was the best tackle in the NFL. So I think it's a great deal for them. And we've seen left tackles play into the late 30s. This will take Trent Williams to, I think, 38, 39 years old. But we've seen left tackles play along and still be effective. So this is not a bad deal lengthwise. And also, it's split into basically 3 parts. The first 3 years are kind of its own separate deal. And after that, the 49ers have a way to get out from under that contract if he's not playing well. So essentially, it's 2 3-year deals here. And the 49ers, like I said, have the ability to get out from under his contract if he's not performing well. And if he is, they just keep it rolling.
Yeah. On another free agency note, Kenny Golladay is coming towards a contract with the Giants, which I personally find depressing because, 1, he's screwing himself. 2, I would have so preferred him on the Rams. That would have been so nice.
Yeah, the Rams just don't have the money. I don't think I can't offer him somewhere between 16 and 20 million per year, which is probably what Kenny Golladay wants.
Yeah, again, Tom Brady learned the lesson about the money, and I wish more players would learn.
But yeah, but here's the thing. Kenny Golladay has not been earning like millions a year because of where he was drafted. He's been earning pretty low compared to what some guys are as star players.
He's see, this is exactly what's going to happen. He's going to get his big contract with the Giants. He's going to make all that money, be really happy about it, and then realize he's stuck on the Giants and then regret it.
Yeah, that there's a possibility of that happening. I will admit to that.
We'll
move on here.
Of that.
There's a great possibility. It's probably going to happen. But we'll move on to your NHL news now because we spent almost 30 minutes talking about the NFL. So let's get some NHL news open here.
Yeah. All right. First one is Tanner Pearson is out for 4 weeks. I don't see this as actually a huge deal, but it's just a side note. The Sabres tanked hard over the past couple of weeks. I don't think I've seen a team do more miserably, and this is coming from a Detroit fan, by the way, than I've seen them play, especially with the level of talent they have on the roster. You would assume they're better. But this is interesting because Detroit is actually at the same time coming out a little bit. They've won, I think, 3 of their last 4, which is completely unreal. And fun fact, Jonathan Bernier, another piece of news, got injured during a win the other night against the Carolina Hurricane, or pardon me, the Dallas Stars. They also beat the Hurricanes that week. That's why I got messed up. But so he's injured. But if you look at his list, the goalie, Jonathan Bernier, has a winning record on that team. How he managed to do that is absolutely beyond me. He's playing unreal for the level of defense, which is pretty much none. This is one of those things where he's playing good enough. He should be dark horse Vezina just for the sake of the defense he's playing against.
The Red Wings are close to passing the Stars here. They're right there with them at the very bottom of the Central Division.
Yeah, but they're not the worst team in the NHL anymore. I can legitimately say there are 4 worse teams in the NHL than them.
Are you talking about the Sabres? Well, the Sabres is obviously one of them. Are you talking about the Sabres, Who else would be the Ducks and the Senators then, or the Air ones?
Yeah, so the Senators are pretty much garbage right now, which is, again, hilarious because all three of those teams you just mentioned have more talent than the Red Wings do. But the Red Wings have managed to, mostly because of Jonathan Bernier, somehow not died as much as those teams that season. And I think if Thomas Greiss does end up turning it around here at some point, we're starting to see the very beginning of coming out of a tank.
All right, the very beginning of coming out of the tank. Sounds like you're still going to be losing for quite a while to come, but maybe next year. There's always next year, McGinnis.
I would give it 2 or 3 years. I would give it 2 or 3 years. When you hear what Steve Yzerman has to say about this stuff, and I think he might splurge a little bit this offseason and we'll take the next step. But he's doing the long game, and this is kind of what happened with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and now they're a freaking juggernaut. So I trust Steve Yzerman to undo rebuilds.
Other NHL news: Alex Ovechkin has continued to climb the NHL goal scorers list. I saw this on SportsCenter the other day. He's now 6th all time, standing alone, right?
Yeah, he is. And he passed, actually, since we were talking about him, Steve Yzerman a long time ago, last season, actually. And the more and more you look at it, man, he is going to pass Ovechkin. I don't know why people are somehow having this debate. Ovechkin has 192 goals. Or pardon me, Wayne Gretzky does. Ovechkin has 718, and Ovechkin probably has a good 6-7 seasons left in him. He scores on average when it's a full season, 40 to 50 goals. Do your math. It's not going to be that long before he passes him.
How old is Alex Ovechkin? He is 35 years old.
Yeah. He's got, and he'll play into his 40s. He'll play into his 40s. Early 40s, but he'll play into his 40s.
All right, so it looks like we could eventually have a new goal-scoring leader there in the NHL. The Flames, they're on a 3-1 streak with their new head coach so far.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the score right before the show started, and they were leading by a goal during their current game also, so they could potentially start 4-1 under their new head coach. And with the way the Canadians are playing and with the amount of games they have left, they could actually sneak into the playoffs here.
The Flames won that game actually today against the Maple Leafs 4-3.
And the Maple Leafs are the team that's been firmly in control of that division, and basically until now, the Oilers have a chance to pass them, but even if they do, the Oilers sink back down because the Oilers are a mess on and off.
Well, speaking of a mess, why don't you guide us through some underachievers and overachievers from this season so far?
Okay, yeah. So I want to bring this up real quick because obviously I think the first underachiever for me has to be the Dallas Stars. This is the biggest disappointment I've ever seen. When you're losing to the Red Wings, and oh, goodness. They lost their scoring ability from last year, which is horribly depressing. Their goaltending minus Hudobin hasn't been as much effective as it was last year either. There's just been nothing clicking for them. It's almost like they haven't forgotten about the fact that they lost a Stanley Cup because it's nearly the same roster it was before. They should be winning as much as they were then, but they're not.
Yes, they're struggling quite a bit. How about some overachievers? Is anyone who is doing better than you expected?
Yeah, and I think this one is interesting. So part of it, we'll go through a couple of them here. The Islanders are definitely one. They actually won 9 games straight not too long ago. They recently started a 2-game losing streak, but 9 games straight, overachieved. But that's kind of what Barry Trotz's MO is, so it depends on what you consider an overachiever. And the Minnesota Wild continue to surprise me. And dang, Kirill Kaprizov, the rookie for them, is going to win Rookie of the Year, no doubt, in my mind. He is the next generational forward coming into the NHL. He had his first hat trick the other day also. And if they're able to re-sign him, there might be a bright future in Minnesota for once.
For once. Minnesota sports has not done very well recently, I don't think, at any level.
The worst part is it's like Minnesota produces some of the most hockey players in the entire U.S., and their team has been mediocre and lost in the first round or even not even made the first round for years now. So the fact that they finally have somebody like Kirill, who, funny enough, is not even from the U.S. or Canada. But, yeah, you're seeing high-level talent there.
All right, anyone else you want to mention here?
Let me double-check. I think, yeah, the one other team I wanted to mention was the Kings. So the Kings, this was supposed to be another tank year for them, and they are on the border mostly because the Blues are stalling, but they're on the border of making the playoffs if they were to start today. this is unbelievable, considering how much of a mess they were last year and how much the roster did not change this year. So I think that's just got to be genuinely impressive for most of the people in the NHL.
All right, so there are your overachievers and underachievers in the NHL. Now we're going to transition to one of the segments we do all the time, every week. It's called Thinking or Dreaming. Basically, we both throw out two statements apiece here, and we tell the other person, is this thinking? Is it realistic? Or is it just dreaming? Is it unrealistic, unlikely to happen? So I will start here.
Hold up. I feel like I haven't gone first in a while, and I want to hit you with this one. I'm curious
what you think about this. All right, let's go.
The Miami Heat will make it to the conference finals this year.
Oh, man, you're really asking me that.
He's hurt.
There are two teams that can guarantee in the East that are better than the Miami Heat right now. And that's the Brooklyn Nets, who don't even have Kevin Durant back yet.
Right.
And the Philadelphia 76ers, who are playing right now without Joel Embiid. Assuming Joel Embiid is back and healthy, the Philadelphia 76ers are better than the Miami Heat. And even without Kevin Durant right now, I think the Brooklyn Nets are probably better than the Miami Heat. Now, I will say that the Heat really struggled early in the year without Jimmy Butler. Had Jimmy Butler been healthy, had he been COVID-free to start the year, and had Bam not suffered some of the injuries he has recently, I think they would probably have about the same record as the Bucks. They had probably about 26 wins. Miami right now is the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference with 22. Milwaukee third with 26, and the Nets and the 76ers tied 28. I think that the Heat will get past the first round of the playoffs. I really have trouble seeing them get back to the conference finals. I really just don't see it. Unless Philadelphia and Brooklyn take each other out at some point, which I don't think will happen based on how the seeding is arranged right now. I can't see the Miami Heat getting back there. I think it's possible, but it will take a heck of a performance from Jimmy Butler to do so.
Which team do you think would be easier for them to beat, just matchup-wise?
The 76ers. The 76ers probably. I think that
too.
The Heat don't have someone to stand up to Joel Embiid, but Joel Embiid is much stickier than the trio of James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant. So I think that the 76ers right now rely very heavily offensively on Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. If you can just shut down Joel Embiid, I think you can find a way to win that matchup. Whereas with the Nets, they have so many offensive weapons, it just doesn't matter. You can't possibly stop them all.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. That if you get a trio in the NBA, everybody else is pretty much screwed.
Yeah, it's very difficult in that situation. I would love to see, though, the Nets play the 76ers in a full 7-game series. That would be very interesting to see that matchup play out.
Yeah, and I think it's quite possible we will, since they're likely to be the first and second seeds and won't play each other till the conference finals. But yeah, I would assume that's where that's going.
All right, my first for you, McGinnis. We'll never see someone create a perfect March Madness bracket in our lives.
So I think I saw the statistic the other day, it was some trillions of chances to get a what was it?
It's like 1 in 1 quintillion or something like that. It's something ridiculous, some made up number that doesn't really exist.
Yeah. So normally, yeah, I think I have to go with dreaming just for the sake of that's a bigger number than I was even aware existed. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with that's definitely, pardon me, thinking. It's dreaming to think somebody would be able to do that. Eventually, statistically, it has to happen, but I think it's I think it's more likely that the NCAA tournament no longer exists before somebody would.
Yeah, society collapses before someone actually gets the March Madness bracket correct.
Hey, the way it's going right now, don't be surprised.
Yeah, I guess you never know. But all right, what's your second one?
All right, let's move on to that. Okay, the Patriots are 1 year away from being highly competitive.
Or one real QB away is what I'm reading here. I agree with you on both parts. I think that if you had, I don't know, Dak Prescott to me is not only back, but he's probably top 7 or 8 in the NFL. So if you had Dak Prescott and New England Patriots, I think they would be competitive to the extent they'd probably win 10 games. So I think that they are a top 10 QB away from being a playoff caliber team or 10-win caliber team. And I think that they are 1 year away from being the same thing. My issue for them, though, is that have they spent too much money to the point where they won't be able to spend any money in coming years? Because realistically, I mean, they overpaid for a couple of guys this offseason. They really did. So the issue becomes now is, have you locked yourself into a situation that is going to hurt yourself in the future when you were trying to fix everything now instead of looking for maybe a 2-year reload here, which is probably what it's going to take. You probably need one more year. I agree with you. They will not be beating the Buffalo Bills in their division for at least one more year.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills are now the team to beat in the AFC. I think KC has taken a big enough step off the gas that will be the case.
It's KC and it's Buffalo for me. It's those two teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
In whatever order you want.
Your second, though.
All right, my second. The Chiefs made a mistake giving so much money to a guard in Joe Thuney.
I think we already covered this. This is absolutely thinking. I think what they needed to do, and if they were really smart, they need to draft linemen in this coming draft. That and some defensive players, because they're pretty much set on offense outside of that offensive line. I think they've got the running back Edwards-Helaire, that you're fine on there. Yeah, you've got receivers and tight ends, no question. You've got the quarterback, but if he's running all the time, he's not going to ask Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson would be winning the division every year, not just so happened to be this year, if it weren't for the fact that his offensive line is garbage and his defense is spotty.
Yeah, I think that if you had taken that contract and gave Joe Thuney to spread it out over a couple of other guys and maybe got 3 decent offensive linemen as opposed to 1 good offensive lineman, I think that would probably have been the smart move for Kansas City. But you can tell I'm not sold on this move for the Chiefs. You can tell that kind of from my
I think you're I think it's beyond not sold. It's very much so against.
I'm very negative about this outlook so far. But anyways, if you still have some battery left on your computer there, I think we can do the player comparison you lined up here. I'll put the numbers up.
This one is hilarious because I saw this statistic the other day and I could not help but laugh, only because I know these players. Okay.
I don't.
Yeah. So
you're going to have to inform me.
Okay. So let's run through this really quick. This is the NHL, obviously for you, but for those watching, this is the NHL. 29 games played. Here's the first player, 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points. That's absolutely awful and unacceptable regardless of the player you are. 21 games, 0 goals, 3 assists, 3 points. This is absolutely 100% acceptable because of the player it is. So this is a funny thing. The first player is Jeff Skinner, who is traditionally a good forward. The second one is a goalie. Who, by the way, at one point during the season was actually beating Jeff Skinner in points. So this kind of summarizes how the season is going for the Sabres, because Jeff Skinner is one of the forwards on the Sabres, obviously. One of the better ones I would have considered. I wrote an article about it, and then Jeff Skinner decided to suck this season for whatever reason. But I thought it was a funny player comparison just for the sake that somehow a goalie was beating a typically good forward in points somehow. But yeah, so Jeff Skinner has fallen off a cliff. Hopefully for him, it's 1 year.
Wait, this is a guy who's gotten over 60 points in a season the past multiple times, and now he's looking at, if he gets to 20 points this year, it would probably be a decent rebound for him at this point.
It's 3 points in 29 games. 3 goals in 29 games, not just 3 points, but 3 goals in 29 games would be unacceptable. That's horrible. Horrible.
We do have one final thing for you tonight. It's the flex of the week. We've done this kind of back and forth. We haven't always found the flex of the week, and we have also spent a lot of time on a bunch of other things throughout the course of this show's history. So don't always have them. We do have a flex of the week this week, McGinnis. Why don't you deliver it for us?
You gotta switch up the segments sometime. There are some we have consistently, like Thinking and Dreaming, and obviously all the news segments, but we like to flip up some of the other segments. So this is kind of a 3-part. First off, the Rangers lost in OT recently to the Flyers. Okay, it was part of a 2-game series, and then on prime time on NBCSN, they absolutely scorched the Flyers by scoring 9 goals, 7 of which came in 1 period.
Oh yeah, I remember watching the replays of this.
And then also Mika Zibanejad scoring 6 points in 1 period, which ties the NHL record, which goes back to the 1980s, by the way.
Yeah, I remember watching this on SportsCenter the morning after it happened. I was just like, like I said, I have a bunch of Philadelphia fans that live by me, and they were all I'm in a group chat with them. They were talking about that game that night. And they're just like, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
The goaltending straight up died in it. I think they might as well have pulled the goalies. The defense was also totally scorched. And this is where I'm getting consistently concerned. Carter Hart is the next goalie. He's having a bad year, but the last couple of years he's been good. For some reason, he's having a stall out this year, and I'm wondering if it's partially because of the defense, because what I've seen from them this year has not been good.
Yeah, they have struggled quite a bit. I think that this is a team that came into the season, from what I understand from my friends, saying that they believe they had a chance to make some noise here, and now it's looking more like they're pretenders than actual contenders.
Yeah, I don't know if that's strictly a defensive issue or even why it came up, to be honest, because in my mind, this last year was the beginning of their Stanley Cup window. They should have had a window, and now is it shut, or are they just having a stall out for a year? Like, I don't know what's up with this. Very different, unexpected, because you've got the forward depth to do it. You had the goalie. Your defense was in shape that was good enough, or so you thought, and then all of a sudden it collapses. I mean, they even made it to the second round last year and put up a good fight against an Islanders team that was very good. So I don't know why all of a sudden this came up, but they're going to have some issues to address in the offseason.
They certainly will, but it sounds like that's going to be it for us tonight, right around the 46-minute mark. So I'd like to remind everyone that this is the Sam and Sam Show. You can find us on the Girl and Truth Facebook page every Friday. We are going to be switching up the time to, right? I guess we usually do 9:30 streams. We're going to be moving to...
To talk a little bit more about that. So we're not going to be switching up the time next week because I might actually end up being able to play hockey in May. I may actually be able to be a part of the spring season, depending on how COVID. My mom just got the COVID shot, first one. So we're going to see how that goes. So their games are Friday and Saturday, and that's probably why we're going to have to switch it up then. But until then, I kind of want to keep it around 9:30. I know we get some good viewership around then, but if we have to switch it up, it'll probably be around then.
Okay. All right. So we'll leave it at 9:30 for now. So you can check us out again Friday next week on the Girl and Truth Facebook page at 9:30. We try to do this every week. Sometimes we skip every now and then, but we do our best to maintain a consistent schedule here and just kind of go through it. And again, we cover a little bit of every sport possible. We go around the sports world, talk about it. So if you enjoyed the show, please feel free to like and share the video. And we hope to see you all